and to see the fresh faces of first-year students with great expectations, some of which may be realized and others perhaps not. One of the dangers of being here is that nobody knows you. It's interesting, isn't it? You are grown up in your home where you're known very well and you are held accountable. And your mom and dad make sure that you toe the line, and you do, at least as long as they can control things, you do as they tell you to do. And then you often don't go that far away to your university of your choice, and so you're still in touch. For those of us who went into the military out of school, we can remember being held accountable for our lives there. There's not a thing in the military that they don't know about you. They examine every part of you and all of your clothing and all of your life, and constantly watch your attitude. And that becomes the basis upon which a promotion or lack of such takes place. And then you get to seminary. And here you can learn to hide, which is one of the reasons I always bring a talk like this when I come for the first time in the fall semester, and that is to remind you of how dangerous it is to be here. Because it is here you can live a lie. You can do very well with your studies. Most of you are awfully bright, and you'll be able to nail down those theological concepts and even languages and whatever may be your pursuit. At the same time, you can drift. And unless you are really committed to spiritual formation as a lifestyle, not a course, you'll make a habit of hiding, and you'll take that habit with you, and then all hell will break loose somewhere along your ministry. We all need people to know us well. One of the great benefits of being married, and married over a long haul, is that your spouse really knows you. Unfortunately, you can be so stubborn you don't even pay attention to what your spouse tells you when trying to warn you or observing things that are moving in the wrong direction. A friend of mine sent me a cute piece about a grandma named Grandma Jones from a southern Mississippi town. She's got a face like 5 miles of bad road. Every time I look at it, she's been living there all her life, and they've called her to the witness stand in a case. And in this trial, the prosecuting attorney looks her in the eye, this elderly grandmother, and he approaches her and says, "Miss Jones, do you know me?" And she responds, "Well, yeah, I do know you, Mr. Williams. I've known you since you were a boy, and frankly, you've been a big disappointment to me. You lie, you cheat on your wife, and you manipulate people, and you talk about them behind their backs, and you think you're a big shot, and you don't even have the brains to realize you'll never amount to anything more than a 2-bit paper pusher. Yeah, I know you, Mr. Williams." Lawyer was stunned. So he pointed across the courtroom to the defense attorney, and he said, "You know the defense attorney?" And she looked over there and said, "Well, yeah, I do know Mr. Bradley. I've known him since he was a youngster. He's lazy, bigoted. He has a drinking problem, and he can't build a normal relationship with anyone. His law practice is one of the worst in our entire state. Not to mention, he cheated on his wife with 3 different women. One of them was your wife." Defense attorney almost passed out. The judge asked both counselors to approach the bench and said in very whispered tones, "If either of you idiots ask if she knows me, you're going right to the gas chamber." Miss Jones. Every neighborhood has a few Miss Jones, don't they? But they're not at the seminary. Some of you have already learned how to skate through a lot of this that is respected by the public, but the truth is you're getting away with it, unfortunately, and no one is yet exposing it, whatever it may be. Now, don't misunderstand. I absolutely love this school. I came in 1959 on probation. Amazingly, they accepted me. I worked for 2 summers on the lawn crew, mowed the grass, trimmed the bushes, planted flowers, and had the privilege of meeting different folks as they'd come and leave the campus. I was so grateful to be here, I can't describe it. And I will tell you that in the process of my 4 years here, graduating in 63, I realized that this place is more dangerous than the Marine Corps, at least in the time I served between the Korean War and the Vietnam War. And even though I was 8,000 miles from home and all kinds of wrong things occurred, and you haven't lived till you've seen the depravity in a Marine Corps barracks. But this is far more dangerous because this is so subtle. And it can look so spiritual. And you can make great grades. And all the while you're forming habits that are going to backfire on you. When the church you begin to serve gets to know the real you, or one of your kids finally decides to tell somebody the whole truth of what it's like living at home with you. You see, seminary can't fix that. It isn't designed to do that. Matter of fact, you're to do that yourself. If I read 1 Timothy chapter 4 correctly, and I think I do, I find here that I am to train myself to be godly, according to verse 7. Train yourself to be godly. Keep short accounts in your walk with Christ. Deepen your authenticity as a true servant of the living God. And while learning the tough assignments of the classroom, and they are tough, and I love it that they're tough, because ministry's tough. And nobody takes pity on you. It's a battle out there. And you who are getting up in years and have been in ministry, and some of them in the faculty, and others of you can speak for yourself. You know what it's like. Here you have your mind stretched, but there you have your heart broken. Here you're around people who are, to the best of their ability, by the power of the Spirit, modeling the message. Out there they beat up on you. When they find you to be phony, they don't keep it to themselves. So my challenge to you today is to train yourself in areas of godliness that you are responsible for. You, no one else. Not your spouse, not your family, not your parents. Don't fall back on your heritage, as great as it may be. And mine was great, by the way. I was raised by 2 from the greatest generation. And I admired them till the day of their death. Neither was perfect. But both of them knew what real meant. And they weren't all that impressed with words. They're the generation that looked for action, deeds. At the risk of embarrassing Greg Hatterberg, there's nobody in the room more deserving. Where'd he go? Oh, there he is over there. I thought he heard I was talking and he left, you know. And so, I met Greg and Lisa when they were at Moody, and he was driving the bus for Moody, and was crazy about him then. I'm same now, both of them. What a wonderful honor. I know you'd never agree, but we think it's very well deserved. You're a model of what a husband is all about. I'm telling you. True. Thank you. Hang around Greg. Hang around him. And maybe some of it will begin to rub off as you train yourself to be godly. In fact, if you read a little further in 1 Timothy 4, you'll find in verse 16, keep a close watch on how you live, says the New Living Translation. Keep a close watch on how you live. Pay attention to your attitude. Check your arrogance. Remember, knowledge puffs up. If you're not careful, you will gain here a great deal of knowledge. And seminary kind of prides itself in the fact that we don't dumb it down. I hope we never do, nor should we. But the fallout is that when you begin to get really, really capable as a student, you get arrogant. And before long, not even a close friend can make you understand how stinking your pride has become. So I'm here today to talk truth. All through this semester, I'm going to address some of the dangers. It's one of my favorite subjects when I come here because I think it is the one that is often overlooked. You who commute, when you drive to this campus, you're driving into a battle zone. The enemy absolutely hates every class at this place. Cannot stand what these profs are teaching, or that you're believing it, or that it's beginning to get a hold of you and transform your thinking, or that it's equipping you for a ministry that, trust me on this, you would never guess right now is true. I sat right where you sit, in another room, in another era, and I felt just like you feel. 2 words, who, me? And in the midst of the grace of God, he reached down in the ranks and allowed me to have a little part in his work. I'll spend the rest of my days saying thank you. John Newton wrote it in the 18th century. Through many dangers, toils, and snares I have already come. That's the tough part. Interesting that went on in the 18th century. It went on in the 1st century. It's always gone on. The godly are always targeted people. Those who are prepared well are right in the crosshairs of the demon's scope. And in the middle of the pressure and the battle, you can fold. In fact, I came across an interesting, where is that? It's a pastor who comes before his staff and admits what's happened. Isn't it fun when you're in front of a group and can't find your place and where you want to quote it, and you look all around here? I got 9 paper clips and none of them are in the right place. He writes elsewhere, since seminary tends to academize the faith, making it a world of ideas to be mastered, it's quite easy for students to buy into the belief that biblical maturity is about precision of theological knowledge. Don't miss this. Paul David Tripp, Dangerous Calling. You read that book before this semester's over. Dangerous Calling by Tripp. It's quite easy for students to buy into the belief that biblical maturity is about the precision of theological knowledge and the completeness of their biblical literacy. So seminary graduates who are Bible and theology experts tend to think of themselves as being mature. But it must be said that maturity is not merely something you do with your mind, although that is an important element. No, maturity is about how you live your life. It's how you treat your wife or your husband. It's how you talk to your kids. It's how you handle pressure. And the worst of the test, it's how you handle success. It's about that. It's possible to be theologically astute and very immature. It's possible to be biblically literate and in need of significant spiritual growth. Now, I love it when I'm able to say these things to first-year students because you're just now getting started. You haven't yet formed the bad habits. And so I want to urge you as you spend years here, and I hope you finish. You haven't done the course till you've finished it. Finish what you've started. So while you are finishing your time at the seminary, pay attention to yourself. Listen to what you're saying. Realize what you're thinking. Acknowledge what your mental growth is beginning to do to your devotional life. Some of you are very gifted linguistically, and you right now, your early students don't know it, but you'll realize it. And you'll catch on to Koine Greek, or you'll get a hold of the Hebrew language. And right now you can't imagine it, but some of you will use that as the track that you want to follow. And you'll be so adept in it, you can read it just like my profs used to read from their texts. It was always humbling to be around that. I took Hebrew from Bruce Waltke. Here's the scar from the first year. There. I mean, I remember he cradled his Bible, his Kittle like this, and he kind of swayed. Unger did a lot of swaying too, but Waltke would just, and he would read it and he'd weep. I'd weep for other reasons. Now, I'll tell you, it's a different. Took me 2 days to know I had the thing upside down. I finally got it back where it ought to be. But you'll be gifted in this. You'll be able to do it. You parse those verbs like there's nothing to it. You'll learn the techniques. Well, big deal. I've never had anybody in the real world ask me if I can parse a verb. Ever. Ever. Now, it's important. I do that. I still work in the original text, but I'm not talking to people that know the original text, and they're not that impressed that I can do that. But I went to a school that believed in teaching that, and I urge you to give yourself to these studies. Don't misread what I'm saying. Pour yourself into it. Give yourself to it, but keep a close watch on how you live and on your teaching. Now, that is kind of a background. You thought I was about through, but that's just the introduction. I won't keep you much beyond 12, I promise. If you got your Bible, and if you don't, why don't you? Turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 10. Here we go, 1 Corinthians 10. Where Paul writes to these people in Corinth, and he is warning them. He's saying, in effect, there are dangerous curves ahead of you. You just by driving, you're going to encounter them. And let me tell you a story, in effect, Paul says. So let me read for a few moments. I don't want you to forget, dear brothers and sisters, about our ancestors in the wilderness long ago. All of them were guided by a cloud that moved ahead of them, and all of them walked through the sea on dry ground. In the cloud and in the sea, all of them were baptized as followers of Moses. All of them ate the same spiritual food, and all of them drank the same spiritual water, for they drank from the spiritual rock that traveled with them, and the rock was Christ. Yet God was not pleased with most of them. Look at that. If I counted correctly, there are 5 all of thems. 2, 3, 4, 5. All of them, all of them, all of them, all of them. Everybody in the class, everybody in the school, everybody in this gathering, everybody who was in the shadow of Moses, all of them did what? Well, they experienced one remarkable event after another, after another, after another. Got to the Red Sea, you know the story. They came and they were thirsty, and out of the rock came water. They needed relief from the heat, and there was the cloud by day. They needed warmth at night, and there was the pillar of fire, and they were hungry, and there came manna, catered every day. Nobody had to cook. Just go out and get it and eat it. Of course, they started to complain about it because it wasn't, didn't have any variety. They got tired of the manna. Remember that? I've often thought that Mrs. Moses' cookbook probably had 1,001 ways to fix it because it was there every day. And yet it was still manna. Exposure. I call this the hot house. You're in a hot house at this school. Doesn't look like it when you're outside. People drive by, they don't know it is, but you and I know it is. Here there is attention to things eternal. Here there is no cynicism, at least from those who teach. There's a respect for the Word of God and the God of the Word. There's a love for spiritual things. There are great songs we sing, and there are memories we make, and there are people that are just the best on the planet. Some of those I went to school with just became, to this day, some of my best friends. It's just fantastic. However, familiarity does what? Sure. Breeds cynicism, contempt. Oh boy, another verse of Scripture. Another book of the Bible. Another course of study. How many more years? Another prof. Another assignment. And with most of them, he was not pleased. Think about that. Think about it. Had you been there among those Hebrews, would he have been pleased with you? Hard to say, isn't it? It's hot in that wilderness. I've been there. But I wasn't there walking. I was on a bus getting through it as quick as I could. And it was air conditioned. And I looked out and I go, ooh, that looks hot. But I wasn't in it. And the wilderness just goes on and on and on and on. Before long, you forget the benefits and the blessings. You forget how God answered in remarkable ways your prayer to get me into this school. You forget how grateful you were when you got that letter of acceptance. Before long, you even forget what a thrill it was when you sat in the classroom and they opened the Word. It was like unbelievable. You never had been around that before, not like this. All of them, all of them, all of them, all of you, all of you, all of you, each one of you, each one of you. But with some, he wasn't pleased. Now, there's a transition in verse 6 that you can't miss. I got it marked in a bright color in my Bible. These things happened as a warning, not to them, but to us. All of this from history that took place, where all of them had all of these delightful benefits, they are warnings to us. What are the warnings? He goes right back through it. Look at this. So that we would not crave evil things. This is a place where you can crave evil things. You can set your heart on things that are not good for you. This is all secret, by the way. Nobody carries a sign. Nobody talks about it. You just do it. And you crave being the tops in your class. You crave winning that award. You crave stuff that promotes you. You crave it. Or that we would not worship idols as some of them did. Idols. I don't know what yours are, but they sure come to my mind quickly. Verse 8, we must not engage in sexual immorality. You say, Chuck, this is a seminary. I know. You brought all of your nature with you. All the lust you had before they accepted you here, you now have with you. All the temptation to stay on the wrong website, you still have with you. You have greater privacy now, because everybody in the place thinks you're studying. When I was at seminary, we had a young man who really was a remarkable student, really, genuinely so. I used to think, man, that is one capable guy. Before our 4 years were over, he dropped out because he was found to be guilty of sexual involvement in several different areas. Some of you are hiding that. It'll go with you. If it isn't dealt with here, if it isn't cauterized at this place, you'll cultivate the ability to hide it even better. One day it'll come out. When I was here, we had a speaker that stood in the chapel at Schaefer Chapel and said, I have with me a small book that only I know the names. These are the names of people since I've entered ministry, just got out of seminary, he said. From then on, I've kept the names of people who were once strong in ministry, but have now flamed out. Most of them because of sexual involvements. He said, just last night I entered name number 42. That's why he says you must not engage in that. You must guard that. I was traveling up in Canada and had made the mistake of telling this particular place I would stay over for the weekend. And I've learned not to do that. I need to be home on the weekend. But back then I said yes, and I was there, and I was tired from the week, and it was a Saturday afternoon, and I went down to the little cafe to get a hamburger, and when you walk out of the cafe, you walk by a magazine rack, and I glanced there, and I thought, well, nobody's around, I'm all alone. Nope, can't do that. So I walked to the elevator, and I punched up, and the doors open. It was empty. I walked in. 2 women walked in behind me. And the door closed. I punched 6, and they said, I said to them, floor. They said, 6 would be fine. Only time in my life I ever felt like Robert Redford. And true, let me tell you what happened. It was like a shade came down. And my mother's voice sounded out in my mind, though she'd been dead a long time. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. Whatever a man sows, what? This he will also reap. He who sows to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. That was as clear on that screen as your face is to me, or my face is to you right now. It was just crystal clear. And I looked at him, I said, no, thanks. I've got more not keep up with at home. Doors opened, they stayed. I got out, doors closed, and I leaned up against that marble wall. And I thank God for the memorized scriptures. Nobody would have ever known. Oh, I would have known. I wouldn't be here today talking to you about this. I saw it all the way through my days on Okinawa. Open prostitution. Gosh. United States government brought in 5,000 prostitutes to service the Marines. Services. As if we're animals. And social disease was rampant. 90% or more in my own barracks. The guys had it or had it. Syphilis, gonorrhea, other social diseases. I was married. And it's an absolute delight to tell you, and to God be all the glory. I've never known another woman intimately but Cynthia Ann Swindoll. Now, wait a minute. There have been opportunities, and there will be for you. So take this literally. Don't engage in it. Stay away from it. If you're addicted to it, get help. Cry out. Say so. Because even back then, it cost 23,000 of them to die in one day. God takes it seriously. Nor should we put Christ to the test. That's the whole idea of presumption. Taking advantage of the grace of God. Some of them who did that died of snake bite. And here's one. Boy, this fits. Don't grumble. Some of you haven't even been here but a few days. You're already starting to grumble. It's amazing. It's just amazing. Stop it. Stop that nonsense. It's terrible on your spiritual life. It's infecting to others. You become diseased, and others as well, because you just grumble. We're not interested in what you don't like. We're interested in what honors God. So get past the stuff that irritates you. nor should we grumble. Look at it again, kind of like bookends. Verse 11. These things happen to them as examples to us. Them, us. Isn't it great of God to do that? They were written down to warn us. Here we are in 21st century, reading about people who lived way back then, and yet their situation is ours. It's a warning. And it's as real as the car you sit in or the classes you attend. Okay. Through many dangers, toils, and snares. And believe me, the same is true for these faculty members. They do not walk on water. They're very bright, very capable, very deserving individuals for the position they have, but they're only human. So pray for them. Pray that they'll be strong. Pray that they won't crave evil things or worship idols or engage in sexual immorality or put Christ to the test or grumble. Some of them see you come into class, they go, oh, man. Okay, you got it. I like that ad when I hear it on the radio. Get it? Got it? Good. I close with something from 1911. Princeton Theological Seminary. Words of B.B. Warfield. Listen to Dr. Warfield's words to the student at that autumn conference at Princeton. We are frequently told, indeed, that the great danger of the theological student lies precisely in his constant contact with divine things. They may come to seem common to him because they are customary. As the average man breathes the air and basks in the sunshine without ever a thought that it is God in his goodness who makes his sun to rise on him, though he is evil, and sends rain to him even though he is unjust, so you may come to handle the furniture of the sanctuary with never a thought above the gross earthly materials of which it is made. Boy, those are good words. The words which tell you of God's terrible majesty, or of his glorious goodness may come to be mere words to you. Hebrew and Greek words with etymologies, inflections, connections, and sentences. The reasonings which establish to you the mysteries of his saving activities may come to be to you mere logical paradigms, with premises and conclusions fitly framed, no doubt, and triumphantly cogent, but with no further significance to you than their formal logical conclusiveness. God's stately steppings in his redemptive processes may become to you a mere series of facts. Facts of history, curiously interplaying to the production of social and religious conditions. But much like other facts occurring in time and space which may come to your notice, it is your great danger. It is your great danger. But it is your great danger only because it is your great privilege. How insightful is that? Think of what your privilege is when your greatest danger is that the great things of religion may become common to you. I warn you, keep a warm heart. Keep a humble spirit. Keep taking our awesome God seriously and stop taking yourself so seriously. Amen. It isn't about you. Never has been, never will be. Amen. Even though you become famous, known the world over, it is not about you. It is about our great God, in whom we live and move and have our being. Get everything you can out of your days at seminary, but be real careful. It's a dangerous place. The longer you're here, the more you'll realize it. And if you don't realize it, I am most concerned about you. Thank you, Father, for knowing everything about us and loving us more than anyone has ever loved us. Thank you for your great grace, greater than our sins. Thank you for the abundance of your understanding, for your calling, for the way that you cut us down to size, that we might represent you as servants of the living God